Linear equations. This is a review of part 4. In today's lesson, students will determine the y-intercept and the slope of a line to write a linear equation. To write a what? Very good. This is a linear equation in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. When given a graphed line, you'll be asked to identify both the y-intercept, which is b, and the slope, which is m. Here, the y-intercept is 5, slope is -2, so you would write the equation as y equals -2x plus 5. By looking at this line, we see that the y-intercept is 3. That is, it goes through the y-axis at 0, 3. But we have a negative slope here because to get from the y-intercept to the x-intercept, we have to go down 3 and to the right 4. That makes the slope -3/4. So the difference between a positive slope and a negative slope is that in a positive slope, as the x values increase, the y values also increase. But in a negative slope, as the x values increase, the y values decrease. Now, before we begin our examples, I would like to take a look at these two lines, okay? How can we describe lines? We can describe lines with two variables or two characteristics. The first one is the y-intercept. It's the what? The y-intercept. The second one is the slope. That's right. So when we take a look at our y-intercept of both of these lines, where is it? Where do they both cross the y-axis, or actually the y and the x-axis, right? What is this point right there? This point is called the origin, exactly. So the y-intercept here would be 0. There would, if we were to write what the y-intercept was of both of those lines, it would actually be 0, 0, okay? But now let's look at the red line versus the black line. The red line is what you're used to seeing, yes? If we take a look now at the slope, the red line is going up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. How would you describe the slope? Is it positive, the red line? Is it going up? In other words, as x is increasing, is y also increasing? Yes, right? Because as x is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's getting larger, the y values are also following suit. And in fact, if x is 1, y is 1. If x is 2, y is 2. If x is 3, y is 3, and so on and so forth. We call this red equation y equals x. Remember this one? Standard, well, that's in slope-intercept form, but y equals x. What about the black one? This black line. What's happening to the black line? Does it have the same y-intercept? Yes. But what's happening to the slope? Is it positive or is it what? It's going down, yes? The line is coming down, and we call that a negative slope, a negative slope. So the reason why it's negative is because if we take a look at the dots are the points on the line, it goes down 1 and then over 1, down 1 over 1. So as x is increasing this way, y would be decreasing. So now let's take a look at that. This is number 1 on your example. Let's take a look at the black line one more time. We said that the intercept, the y-intercept is what? It's the origin. It's 0, 0. What is happening to the slope? To get from the origin to the next point on the line, we're going to go down 1, so -1, and over 1. And then we would keep going. Down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. So the slope is negative. It's -1 over 1. However, couldn't we go in the other direction to get to this point right here? Yes, we could go up 1 as well, rise up 1 and run over -1. Can you see that? Okay, so if you're talking about a slope, it goes both ways, which means the line goes in both directions, yes? So if it's -1 over 1, we could also rise up 1 and go over We also could go over in the negative direction 1, right? If we go up 1, then we're going to the left 1. Up 1, over 1. Up 1 to the left. And left is negative. So what do you think the equation for this line is then? What is the equation for the line? We know the y-intercept, right? We know the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is what? It's 0. So we're going to add 0. It technically doesn't need to be there. But what is the slope? What is negative 1 divided by 1? If ever there's a 1 under something, you can just go ahead and keep the top part, okay? So technically this is negative 1x, or negative, y equals negative x, but you can write it as negative 1 over 1x. Now this can also be written as y equals, what's negative 1 times x, you think? It makes the x negative, right? So it could be written as y equals negative x. That would also work. Yes? And that makes sense because remember, if the red line was y equals x, then it makes sense that the black line is y equals negative x. Yes? Because this one's going down, it has a negative slope. And this line's going up, it has a positive slope. Let's take a look at number 2, okay? When we're trying to determine the equation for the line, we're going to be writing a linear equation using slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. What did I say? Y equals mx plus b. So we're first going to look for the y-intercept. You're going to look for what? Y-intercept, and then from that point you are going to find the rise over run, which is the slope, represented as m. All right, so let's take a look at this line. What do you think the y-intercept is? What point is this right here? This is what? Yeah, it's 0. How many does it go up? 2, right. So stop thinking about the y-intercept so much as 0, 2, and just think that the y-intercept is actually where the line is crossing the y-axis at 2, okay? So that's why when we say y-intercept, we say, hey, the y-intercept is 2. But if we graph the point, it's 0, 2. Make sense? From the y-intercept, we need to find the slope, which is rise over run. What is it? Rise over run. So to get to this point on this line, don't we have to go down first? We have to go down how many? We have to go down 1, 2, 3, so down negative 3, and over how many? To the positive 1 direction, right? Yes. So with negative slope, you are going to first go down, okay, and then you can go over to the right. So we call the rise over run, we rise, but we're really going down 3, and then we run over 1. Now, you can also go in the other direction, because you can also go up to this point right here. So if we wanted to go up, we would go up positive 3, but what direction will we go to get to this point? We'd have to go negative 1. You with me? Okay, so we can also take that negative and move it to the bottom, making this up positive 3 and over to the left negative 1. And that is essentially what a negative slope is that either the rise or the run are negative, but they're not both negative, because if they were both negative, then it would be positive. All right? So now we can go ahead and just take the first one, okay, because the negative's on top. And we're going to write that the slope of this is negative 3. Now, if you write over 1, that's optional, but if it helps you, you could do that. But negative 3 divided by 1 is still negative 3. Yes? And then we say, what was the y-intercept? The y-intercept is 2. So we say positive 2. And then we put a box around that, and that is the equation. Meaning, if I started from any point, not just the y-intercept, but if I started from any point, let's say I started from this one right here, okay? And I went down 3 and over 1, I would get to another point on the line. And I went down 3 and over to the right 1, okay? Or in the other direction, up 3 over 1 and up 3 1. Yes? You get any point on the line using this equation right here. Next, let's take a look at number 3. First of all, what do you notice about the line? Do you think this line has a positive slope or a negative slope? It has a negative slope, right? The line is actually going down. Yes? But to describe the line and to write an equation, we first want to look at the y-intercept. What do you think this y-intercept is right here? Where is it starting? It's crossing the y-axis at what? -1, -2, -3. Correct. So the y-intercept here is negative. And the slope is also negative. Let's find the slope. You're going to notice it's kind of, it almost looks like the line could be flat. Yes, the reason why is because we're going to have a fraction here for a slope. To get from the y-intercept to one of the other points that's on the line, we need to first go down, how many? We're going to go down -1. Can you see that? Down -1. And let's go over in positive direction, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what do we call that slope? -1, we went down, -1, and we went over 4. Can you go in the reverse direction? Could you go in the reverse direction? You sure could, right? Now you'll notice when I write the slope, I'm just going to take the negative and I'm going to put it down. Yes? And I'm just going to rewrite it. 1, rise up 1 and go to the left 4. Watch. We're going to rise up 1. Yeah, positive. That makes sense. We're rising up 1. And in the negative direction, moving over 1, 2, 3, 4 units. -4. So that's rising up 1 and to the left 4. That's why slope can be -1/4 or 1/4. This helps you to actually graph the line. But when you write the equation for the line, you can go ahead and do the first one, which is -1/4. That's M. That's what the slope is. What's B? B is the y-intercept. So what's the y-intercept? Do we remember? It is -3. And I know this says positive, right? But if you're adding a negative, positive times negative is negative. So that is why your final equation says y equals -1/4 x minus 3. Let's take a look at our last example, okay? We're going to write the linear equation, but first we need to start with the y-intercept. So that's B. What is the y-intercept of this line? Tell me. Where does it cross the y-axis? At where? 1, 2, 3, 4. Correct. So the y-intercept is +4. From the y-intercept, what do we have to do to get to the next point on the line? Well, we have to go down first, yes? You can rise down. How many? 1, 2, 3, like we're creating a triangle. -3 and over what? +2. Yeah? Okay. So down -3 over to +2 in that direction. So we're going to say -3 over +2. Okay. Could we go in the other direction? Could we rise up? Yes. How many? 1, 2, 3. And run over how many? We'd have to go to the left 2, so that would be -2. So you're going to write the exact same fraction, which is 3/2, but that 2 is going to be negative. The reason why these are the same is because negative divided by positive is negative. Negative divided by positive is negative. So we're going to write here, what are we going to write right here? We're going to write the first, yes? The first one, -3/2. And what is the y-intercept? The y-intercept is +4. So that is this linear equation. Meaning, if we start from any point on the line, we could go down 3. Let's go from here. Okay, down 3. 1, 2, 3 over 2. Is that point on the line? Yes. Down 3. 1, 2, 3 over 2 in the right. 1, 2. Is that point on the line? Yes. And we could also do the opposite, right? We could go up 3 and over 2 like we did to begin with, and up 3 over 2. That line should have gone all the way through. Yeah? us. Okay, so go ahead and get that down.